In the heart of the Whispering Woods, there was a song. They called it the Haunted Melody, a tune older than the oldest oak, older than the village of Heldergrave itself. The melody was said to drift on the wind, low and mournful, wrapping around the ancient trees like a lover's embrace. But this was no ordinary love song. It was a song of death, of madness, of despair so deep it could swallow a man whole. Rowan had heard the stories since he was a child, tales of villagers who wandered into the woods and never returned, or worse, returned as hollow shells of their former selves, eyes vacant and mouths whispering a tune no one else could hear. But Rowan was no ordinary villager. He was a bard, a collector of stories and songs, and he knew that if he could capture the haunted melody, he would be remembered for all time. "You're a fool," Rowan, Alara, the village elder, had told him the night before he set out. "The song isn't something you can control. It's alive, and it will eat you alive if you let it." But Rowan had only smiled, his blue eyes glinting with confidence. "I've faced danger before, Alara. I've sung the songs of kings and conquered the hearts of queens. What's one old melody compared to that?" Alara's eyes had darkened, her voice dropping to a whisper. "This isn't about pride, Rowan. This is about survival. The forest doesn't forget. It doesn't forgive. And the melody, it's not just a song. It's a curse." But Rowan had already made up his mind. As dawn broke, he strapped his lute to his back and headed into the woods, ignoring the whispers of the villagers, the way their eyes lingered on him with a mix of pity and fear. The Whispering Woods were aptly named. The trees seemed to murmur secrets as he walked, their branches entwined like skeletal fingers, blocking out the sun and casting the forest in perpetual twilight. The path beneath his feet was soft with moss, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and rotting leaves. But Rowan felt no fear. He was a bard, a master of his craft, and the forest was just another stage. For hours he walked, the silence around him growing heavier, more oppressive. There was no birdsong here, no rustling of animals in the underbrush. Only the sound of his own footsteps, and beneath that, something else, a low, almost inaudible hum that seemed to come from the very earth itself. The melody, he thought, heart-quickening with excitement. It's close. He followed the sound deeper into the woods, his lute now in his hands, fingers itching to play. The hum grew louder, more distinct, a tune that was both beautiful and terrible, like the last breath of a dying man. It wrapped around his mind, pulling him forward, drawing him into the heart of the forest. And then he saw it. The tree stood in a small clearing, its bark blackened and twisted, its roots writhing through the earth like the limbs of some great beast. The air around it pulsed with dark energy, a palpable force that made the hair on the back of Rowan's neck stand on end. Faces were etched into the bark, twisted in agony, their mouths open in silent screams. Rowan's breath caught in his throat. The tree was alive, its very presence a blight on the forest, a wound that would never heal. And from it came the melody, a tune so haunting, so filled with sorrow, that it seemed to pierce his soul. Without thinking, Rowan raised his lute and began to play. At first, his fingers moved confidently over the strings, matching the melody note for note. But as the song continued, something strange began to happen. The strings grew hot under his touch, burning his fingers, and the melody twisted, becoming darker, more chaotic. It wasn't just a song, it was a voice, ancient and malevolent, whispering secrets that no human should ever hear. Rowan tried to stop, but his hands wouldn't obey. The melody had taken hold, wrapping around his mind like a vine, squeezing tighter and tighter until he could barely think. The faces in the tree began to move, their eyes opening, glowing with a sickly yellow light. The ground beneath him shifted, roots curling around his ankles, pulling him down. "No!" Rowan screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the melody, his voice drowned out by the song that now poured from his lute, wild and uncontrolled. The shadows around him thickened, the forest closing in, and the faces in the tree twisted in triumph. Then Alara was there, her face pale, eyes wide with horror. "Rowan, you have to stop. You're feeding it." But Rowan couldn't stop. The melody was in his blood now, coursing through his veins, filling his head with visions of darkness, of endless night. The roots pulled him deeper, the faces on the tree leering at him, their mouths moving in time with the melody. Alara rushed forward, grabbing his hands, trying to wrench the lute away. But the moment she touched it, she gasped, her eyes glazing over as the melody took hold of her as well. "No!" Rowan managed to choke out, but it was too late. The tree's roots surged up, wrapping around both of them, pulling them toward the twisted trunk. The melody grew louder, a cacophony of despair, of souls lost to the darkness, their screams mingling with the notes. With a final, desperate effort, Rowan tried to break free, to pull his hands from the strings. But the melody wouldn't let him go. It had claimed him, body and soul, and now it would claim Alara too. The last thing Rowan saw before the darkness consumed him was the tree's bark splitting open, revealing a gaping maw filled with teeth as sharp as knives. The melody reached a fever pitch, and then the world went black. The villagers found the clearing the next day, but there was no sign of Rowan or Alara. Only the tree remained, its bark now smooth, free of the faces that had once twisted in agony. But if you listened closely, you could still hear the melody, faint and distant, carried on the wind, a song that would never end, a curse that would never die. And in the heart of the whispering woods, the tree waited, hungry for the next foolish soul who would hear its call.